Today on the Inside Scoop, Tennessee's gonna get their five-star wide receiver. The big changes happening with Michigan recruiting, but first, we saw a commitment go down this week in one of the most unique ways possible. Let's bring on national recruiting analyst Sam Spiegelman. Sam, before we get into one of the rarest commitments we've ever seen, let's talk about four-star cornerback Juwan Johnson and his commitment to LSU on Monday. Juwan Johnson, you guys remember who he is. He decommitted from Colorado last month, announced his decision to commit to the LSU Tigers on Monday. Sam, UF and Colorado, they were threats to land him early on, but why LSU and why now?
Juwan Johnson committed to the Buffs over these LSU Tigers, over the Gators back in February. And that was a bit of a surprise. He had been to campus one time. Deion had just offered close to Christmas. Fast forward, he returns to Boulder for the spring game. And Josh, when we spoke about this, he decommits after an 8+ hour trek back home to Lafayette, Louisiana. Boulder to Lafayette, not a direct one-way path. All that time thinking about, going to school closer in the SEC. We know that Texas was involved, A&M, Florida, Ole Miss, all getting involved with Juwan Johnson. He visited LSU on Monday, and within hours before even returning back home, commits to LSU ahead of schedule, and another big get for Brian Kelly and the Tigers that are locking down the state of Louisiana.
Yeah. Are you a little surprised in the timing of it? I mean, he didn't go take another trip to Florida. He didn't go see any other schools. It was just LSU all the way.
LSU never took their foot off the gas, but at the same time, they never pressured him. They never tried to, negative recruit Colorado, and they just knew that they would always be there whenever it hit Juwan Johnson. They know being the hometown school, they would get him on campus again. That visit didn't take place until Monday, and before that, I think the process kind of sped up for Juwan Johnson. He was originally going to take OVs out to Florida, out to Ole Miss. Those plans actually fell by the wayside during the spring. The LSU coaches went by LCA, his high school, quite a bit. And by Monday, he was ready to put a bow on his recruitment.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the big news of the week. I mean, Juwan Johnson to LSU is big, but when the number one quarterback in America comes off the board, that is the big news of the week. And Dylan Raiola committed to Georgia on Monday. The one-time Ohio State commitment has made his decision a little bit earlier than most expected. He had an official visit set to UGA in early June, and people thought that, hey, maybe that's going to be the time that he did it. Dylan Raiola made no hints on when he was going to drop it, but on Monday, about noontime Central, he made his decision known. UGA Dogs pick up the number one quarterback in America. Now, let's take a look at the top quarterbacks that are still uncommitted. We look here in the top 10. Only uncommitted quarterback in the top 10 is Elijah Brown out of California. Then you have Michael Van Buren uncommitted at number 12, but not for long. We're going to get to that here in a minute. Once Van Buren is off the board, though, that'll leave us with Isaac Wilson, Samaj Jones, and Jakari Williams uncommitted at 17, 18, and 19. So you have number 7, number 17, 18, and 19, the only uncommitted prospects at the quarterback position inside the top 20. So that brings us to Michael Van Buren, who announces his decision on Saturday. Van Buren out of St. Francis Academy. Sam, who's this one coming down to when Van Buren makes his decision on Saturday?
It's always been the three teams in the mix: Oregon, Penn State, and Maryland. And ultimately, when he makes his decision this weekend, we believe it'll be Oregon versus Penn State. Both of these teams have had momentum with one of the best uncommitted quarterbacks still on the board. Penn State is the regional favorite, and James Franklin and co are recruiting at an extremely high level right now. But we know that Van Buren was just at the Oregon spring game, spending time with their current quarterback commit, Luke Moga, another 2025 blue chip quarterback, Achilles Smith Jr., who I also placed an RPM in for the Ducks earlier this week. It seems like new Ducks offensive coordinator Will Stein has kind of found his groove on the recruiting trail. And after a busy spring of visits for Michael Van Buren and the Ducks quacking a lot over on the East Coast, they could be in line to add their second blue chip quarterback of this class.
Yeah, I think they're going to get it quacking this weekend. I have my pick in for Van Buren to Oregon as well. When I saw him make that spring game visit, that kind of locked it in for me. I think that Mike Locksley and James Franklin can never be counted out in this one, but I think Van Buren's going to be making the cross-country trek to Oregon. All right, Let's move on to one of the biggest stories of the week. Colorado picked up their biggest commitment of the cycle on Monday, and of course, it comes in a unique way. Aaron Butler is a huge commitment for Coach Prime and the Buffs. He's a 6-foot corner from Calabasas, California, once committed to USC, no longer the number 4 ranked corner in the country and the 126th best player overall, committed to Colorado this week. Colorado's next highest commitment is Omar White at 329 overall. So Aaron Butler checks in at 122 overall. And Butler was on campus for the Buffalo spring game. Remember, we mentioned that he was the only official visitor on campus that weekend. And boom, 3 weeks later, he is committed. But Sam, the way he committed was unique. Not all coaches do IG Lives, first of all. Deion was on an IG Live. He popped open his phone, goes live on Instagram, and Butler was watching the Instagram Live. And the way he chose to do his commitment is rare. He did it in the comment section of Coach Prime's Instagram Live. Quote, here's what he said. "Well, I think that describes me to a T, Coach. No cap. With that being said, I want to officially announce my commitment to the University of Colorado to the world. Hashtag we coming." That's how he did it, Sam. All jokes aside, though, Colorado is getting a damn good player. But have you ever seen a commitment like this?
I think we've all seen Instagram Live commitments. I don't think we've ever seen a commitment in the comment section before. But like you said, if you're Deion, you take that commitment and you run. Aaron Butler, wanted by not only Colorado, but obviously a top target for both Oregon, also UGA, which we know is rolling on the recruiting trail right now. Butler, like you mentioned, 6 foot, 185 or so pounds, getting recruited at cornerback by Deion, but also a lot of schools around the country like him as a wide receiver. Really dynamic on both sides of the ball. And when you think about that, who else do you think about, Josh? Deion Sanders. I think that after being that lone official visitor last month for the star-studded spring game, he got the feeling that he could be that dynamic player that's used on both sides of the ball at Colorado. We used to talk about Juwan Johnson in that same capacity. Butler wants to play early, and he wants to be used on offense and defense, and I think he found the perfect fit.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how Juwan Johnson comes off the board to LSU, kind of the same player, but Aaron Butler, even a higher ranked corner, can kind of do both on both sides of the ball. So Colorado gets their guy in Aaron Butler. I'm sure there's more to come. We'll continue to cover Colorado recruiting better than anybody else. Sam, thanks for dropping in on the Inside Scoop today. Let's talk Tennessee recruiting. Josh Heupel and the Volunteers have the 9th ranked class in America, but they're looking for more. Before we get to some of the recruiting momentum taking place right now at Tennessee, let's bring on VolQuest Austin Price. Austin, what do you make of top 100 wide receiver J.J. Harrell? He's the only wide receiver commitment in the class, but he made some recent comments about his recruitment being open. He committed in February, but now what do you make of his commitment?
Well, I think, you look at this like any kid that's a pretty solid player, obviously a good solid ranking, Josh. When you commit early, you all of a sudden start to feel like, wait a minute, everybody's talking about this guy and that guy, and no one's talking about me no more. And then you put out a couple of tweets, and here comes the flurry. And, people are talking about J.J. Harrell again. I think, he's saying a lot of the right things to Tennessee, but if you're Tennessee, you have to consider Ole Miss. You have to consider a lot of schools that are after him a real threat. Alabama was kind of in there early. Before he picked Tennessee. I'm not sure they're much of a factor still there, but I know Ole Miss has made a strong push there. And, again, Tennessee's got to take that one seriously. They'd love to hold on to J.J. Harrell, but they also have to continue to recruit a big, broad wide receiver board as if they're not going to hold on to J.J. Harrell. So you kind of have to plan for some contingencies with one of the top players in the state of Mississippi.
Well, you're right. We are talking about J.J. Harrell here on the Inside Scoop, so maybe there was something to his plan. Now, I am going to ask you about some recruiting momentum, especially with the 5-star wide receivers. But first, Tennessee fans, do me a favor, like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. I'd appreciate that. All right, Tennessee is in it for several top wide receivers. I mean, hey, Georgia can't sign them all, so Tennessee is going to have their shot. Who do you think right now Josh Heupel's making a priority at the wide receiver position?
Well, let's start in state with Amari Jefferson. Everybody's going to say Mike Matthews. They're going to say Ryan Wingo, and those guys are important too. But I think the most important receiver in this class is Amari Jefferson. He's an hour and 20 minutes down the road in Chattanooga. You look at who else is in on him: Alabama, Georgia, Auburn. You name the schools that are after Amari Jefferson, they're all top end schools. And so, for my liking, because he is an in-state kid, because he's an hour and 20 minutes down the road, that's what makes him the most important. And if you can keep J.J. Harrell, Amari Jefferson, and let's say you're able to land a Wingo or a Mike Matthews, that's a pretty good wide receiver haul, right? Kelsey Pope will have had a really good year in year 2 as a wide receivers coach. This is after signing basically a top 50 player, Nathan Leacock, last year. Again, I lean Amari Jefferson. After that, I go Mike Matthews ahead of Ryan Wingo. Again, that's based off people I've talked to and based off the fact that, I kind of like how versatile he is in Hype's offense. I don't think you can go wrong either way, but it sure seems like Matthews is going to leave the state of Georgia. Wingo may end up in the state of Georgia long term, as the Bulldogs have made a strong push for the St. Louis wide receiver. Either way, Tennessee's swimming in the right waters.
Yeah, it's an exciting offense, and I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you're going to get a great wide receiver in this class, maybe 2, maybe even 3. You just wonder where it's going to come from right now because there are a lot left on the board. Austin, we're 3 weeks into the evaluation period here in the month of May. So who are some of the top targets that Tennessee coaches have been keeping an eye on?
Well, let's start at running back. Tennessee and running backs coach Jerry Mack, they've kind of been all over. Peyton Lewis, he's a on 300 kid from Salem, Virginia. Will officially visit Tennessee in June. Will officially visit South Carolina in June. I think could be back in for the Memorial Day event. We'll see. Tennessee's swinging hard to get a bunch of kids here for that weekend. Some will make it, some won't. You look at Braylon Russell, big, sturdy back out of Arkansas. That's Arkansas, Tennessee, Baylor, South Carolina, all in on him. Daniel Hill continues to evade, whatever you want to say. Tennessee kept swinging last year at a guy like Noah Rogers. Noah Rogers kept hinting around like he's going to come. He never made it. I keep calling Daniel Hill this year's Noah Rogers for Tennessee, but there is some promise out there that he could make it back in here at the end of the month. If that happens, I think that could kind of stir a little bit of chatter out there amongst the running back room. Elsewhere, I look at offensive and defensive lines. It's, Williams Winery. It's Cam Franklin. Offensive line, it's, the Satterwhite kid out of Ohio. It's Max Anderson out of Texas. Ronan O'Connell out of the Mid-State. Those are all very, very important. It's a line of scrimmage league, and I'd expect Tennessee to continue to try to swing big, get some offensive and defensive linemen.
Yeah, Tennessee's always looking for great players in the trenches. They recruit well in the Southeast. Hell, Tennessee recruits well nationally. But now they recruit well internationally. Just yesterday, Tennessee goes overseas to find their next great pass rusher in Emmanuel Okoye. Tell me more, Austin, about how they found him in London.
Well, again, kids from Nigeria, found by the NFL Academy, a great story. And, the NFL Academy was a big part of his announcement yesterday. Has really played 1 year of football and is an athletic specimen. Having seen him in person, he is long and lean. And if his ability to move matches up with just his body, it's going to be really impressive. Now, he is super raw. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, what does he play at the next level? I think he can play on either side of the ball. And I think, there's some versatility there. But really credit the staff. They were able to get him in here for the orange and white game, so he's able to see what it's kind of like. It's not quite, they had 55,000 people or so here, 60,000 people. Had enough of an atmosphere that he was kind of blown away by that. And I think that really stuck with him as he took his other visits, to USC, Texas Tech, and some others. And ultimately, it was projected for 24, reclassifies to 23, and will be on campus in just a couple of weeks.
Wow. Well, I'm sure if he enjoyed Neyland Stadium for the spring game, wait till he gets a load of the season. Yeah. That'll be fun for Emmanuel Okoye. Nice pickup for the Tennessee Volunteers. All right, but now we're heading into the month of June. That's where things really get exciting in recruiting, and there's going to be a ton of official visitors coming to campus in Knoxville. Who do you think is some of the most important June official visitors that'll step foot on campus?
Well, it's some of the guys we just talked about. Williams Winery, it's Cam Franklin, it's Amari Jefferson. Jaden Riddell's another big one for Tennessee. And then, of course, you got impress the guys that you've already got in the boat, whether it's a Jonathan Eccles, a J.J. Harrell. All those are important. But if you're talking about just uncommitted players, I would definitely lean those D linemen. Cam Franklin, Williams Winery, those are two players that I think Tennessee covet. They were very much in the mix for those two. And it's one of those situations where a good official visit could be the difference between landing one in December and not.
Josh Heupel and his staff seem to do a great job whenever they get top recruits on campus. All right, Austin, thanks for checking in with us. Talk a little Tennessee today on the Inside Scoop.
Appreciate it, Josh. Thank you.
Michigan is the new leader on the recruiting prediction machine for a pair of four-star pass rushers. Let's bring on Michigan recruiting expert E.J. Holland. EJ, before we talk about the new four-star prospects Michigan is trending for, what has changed at Michigan? I got to ask you, you haven't been on for a couple months. Last year, Michigan finished 18th overall, kind of a lackluster run-up to signing day. They didn't sign any five-star recruits. This cycle, much different. Currently sitting at number 5. It just feels like there's momentum. There's life in Michigan recruiting again. What changed?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, they proved that it wasn't a fluke on as far as on-field success. Back-to-back Big Ten champions, back-to-back college football playoff appearances. So it all starts with winning on the field, right? Second thing is there was no real drama with Jim Harbaugh in the NFL. I mean, obviously there was the Denver Broncos talk, but it didn't last very long. The year before that, he actually flew out to Minnesota, had a meeting with the Vikings. It went into the contact period when coaches were out on the road. This year, Harbaugh kind of shut it down early. It seemed like recruits knew he was staying at Michigan, where there were more questions the cycle beforehand. So winning, not as much Harbaugh drama, and not a lot of staff movement. You really only had a couple of assistant coaches leave. The staff staying together, the on-field success, the lack of Harbaugh drama, and then just getting guys in early, elite guys in early to help recruit others. This class bond has been terrific. These guys have helped out the coaching staff in recruiting one another. So I think it's all come together nicely for Michigan. I mean, those results on the field are starting to pay dividends on the recruiting trail as it should be.
All right, we're going to talk about a battleground recruitment next, but right now, Michigan fans, like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. We're going to be talking Michigan all summer, so jump on board right now and subscribe. All right, EJ, one of the battlegrounds recruitments that we've been following is with Aaron Scott Jr., the 4-star cornerback out of Springfield, Ohio. You told me back in January that this one was going to come down to Ohio State and Michigan. Oregon also involved, but it looks like what you said is happening. Michigan official visit set for June 16th. Ohio State visit set for June 24th. Can Michigan beat Ohio State for a top player in the state of Ohio?
Yes. And I'll tell you why. I think Steve Klingscale has done a fantastic job here, Michigan's co-defensive coordinator and cornerbacks coach. He has really strong ties in the state of Ohio, dating back to his time at Kentucky, where he himself was an elite recruiter at not necessarily a huge program. Coming over to Michigan, he has a lot more to sell. His track record has been awesome. He's been a guy that's, again, been really, really entrenched in the high school football scene in the state of Ohio. He's well respected in enemy territory. They've already proven they can steal a guy from Ohio, from the Buckeyes. They did it earlier this cycle with top 100 running back Jordan Marshall. I think they can do the same with Aaron Scott. But really, it's going to come down to those official visits. Yeah, for Michigan, it kind of sucks that Ohio State is getting that last OV. But at the same time, Michigan's getting him in for Victor's Weekend, which is June 16th. A lot of commits will be there. They want to get him around the guys already in the class. And like I mentioned earlier, these guys have been terrific peer recruiters, and they've been working extremely hard. So I think right now, Michigan is right up there with Ohio State. Like you mentioned, Oregon is hanging around. That was a childhood favorite. But at the same time, I think this is a Michigan-Ohio State battle, and we'll see who comes out on top after those OVs.
All right, let's talk about those two pass rushers that have begun trending in Michigan's direction. I'm talking about Elias Rudolph and Devin Baxter. Let's start with four-star Elias Rudolph, who's at Deerfield Beach High School right now, but he's from Ohio, left there, playing his senior year in South Florida. He's also ranked as a linebacker, but EJ, I know Michigan's recruiting him as an edge. What's going on with Rudolph, and why is he trending right now towards Michigan?
Yeah, they definitely see him as an edge, 6'3", 205 pounds. He's on the lighter side, but they see him as a speedy pass rusher. Michigan's trending because, again, Steve Klinkscale and his strong ties to Ohio. Yeah, he's at Deerfield Beach in Florida for right now, but he is originally from the Cincinnati area. He was an early priority, pushing hard for him. They're getting him in for an official visit next month. I think they can, seal the deal once he makes that official visit. And like I said, it's just kind of that Ohio movement. It's a continuation of peer recruiting and Steve Klinkscale's phenomenal ties in the state.
Another edge that started trending towards Michigan this week is four-star Devin Baxter out of Maryland. He goes 6'5", 235 pounds. EJ, why is Baxter trending towards Michigan?
Yeah, Devin Baxter is a prospect I'm really close to putting in a prediction for. The staff has done a fantastic job of selling him on the recent edge production. Obviously, you can sell guys like Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, Mike Morris, who just went in the draft this year. That's really caught his attention. The entire coaching staff, from Mike Elston to Dylan Roney, has built strong relationships with him. The thing about Baxter and why I haven't put in a prediction just yet is because he hasn't visited. He hasn't made an unofficial visit just yet. He is set to come in for an official visit on June 16th. I think if everything goes well, then it'll just be a formality and Michigan will be able to win out in that recruitment. There aren't a lot of other major players involved in that recruitment, mostly because Baxter is a really high ceiling, low floor type of prospect, but Michigan just loves his upside. They love what he can turn into. They see him as a guy like a David Ajabo that they can stash for a couple of years and then develop into an NFL type of player, into a first, second round draft pick type. So I do think the edge development and just what Michigan has to offer overall has really been impressing Baxter. And this is going to be a big edge class. You talk about Rudolph, you talk about Baxter. There are a lot of other names out there that Michigan is, in a great position for, if not the pole position. Guys like Brian Robinson, guys like Jacob Smith, so guys like Darian Mayo, Dominic Nichols. So this could be 5 edges in this class. I mean, Michigan's finding a way to make room in what could be a class of 30.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about Jaden Davis and relate it to what you talked about at the top. Having a top QB committed has helped Michigan. So who are some of the recruits that Jaden Davis could have an impact on as we head into the summer with the official visits, camps, and all that?
Yeah, so Jaden Davis has been one of the peer recruiters in this class. And when you talk about having an elite quarterback, that obviously helps. That's something Michigan hasn't had in back-to-back cycles. They had 2 project takes over the last 2 years. Jaden Davis is the first high-level quarterback they've landed since J.J. McCarthy. And obviously that's going to help with wide receivers. Some of the guys that Davis has been targeting hard since committing to Michigan. One, his teammate, Jordan Shipp, 4-star receiver out of Providence Day. In Charlotte right now, it looks like a Michigan, North Carolina, NC State battle. Really going to come down whether he wants to stay closer to home or not, but having Jaden Davis gives Michigan an extra boost. You have Bradell Richardson, who spent some time playing on the 7-on-7 circuit with Davis. He's a 4-star receiver out of the Tampa area. That connection is going to help. And then lastly, 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. Michigan's not being talked a lot about when it comes to national reporting with Wingo. There isn't a lot of optimism around Michigan's camp right now, but they did secure an official visit. So you get him in, you pitch Davis, and you never know what can happen. I mean, Wingo's been one of those recruits where the leader on the RPM has changed a couple of times. Why not again? I mean, Michigan is going to do everything they can on that OV, and Jaden Davis will be squarely involved in helping peer recruit.
Yeah, that's why you get a premier quarterback like a Jaden Davis to commit early so you can have a shot at a 5-star wide receiver like a Ryan Wingo. All right, EJ, thanks for checking in. Michigan sits at number 5. It's going to be an exciting summer. You'll be back on the Inside Scoop soon. Thanks. Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos
on the On3 YouTube page.